tech sectors for the platform that you have given us to address matters of concern. As we come here together today, members of parliament who are fighting against corruption, global financial integrity, transparency, international and other stakeholders, we ask for your guidance. We invite the Holy Spirit and know that you will be with us, even with those participants who are joining us online, and that we shall truly take the opportunity that we have to rise to make a difference. We ask as we commit this in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Online participants, I understand you're not able to hear me at all. Maybe, I don't know. Can you hear anything right now?
Yes, but it's not very clear.
Okay, so maybe I'll move closer to the laptop. I really have another mic. We need another mic to go around the room. Okay, great. All right, so I'll just start by asking our members present in Sagana here today. We are in a hotel in Sagana, in Murang'a County. We'll ask our participants who are here present with us to briefly introduce themselves, and then we can go to the next step. I don't think there's another. I'll just hand over this mic. I have to come here. Wow, that's. Or I will ask, yeah, if you pass the mic, they'll not be able to hear. That's the problem. Because we don't have video conferencing. Yes. So maybe through the chair can stand here and introduce the member, then the member would stand. Would that make sense, Chair? Yes. I think that would be the most expedient. So that's the chair of APNAC, Honorable Shafik. You can see him walking. He's out of frame. Yes. No. You're out of frame. We can't see you. But I hope now you can hear me. Better, at least. Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
I'll hand over to the chair of APNAC to introduce the members of parliament. Philip. They can see the members because the camera is pointed.
Okay. Good. Good morning, members of our Zoom meeting. We are very pleased to be with you. I'm going to ask my colleagues as we put as I introduce them, they will stand up and take their mask off so you can actually see them. The first one is Honorable Peter Martins, Ward Chief. This is a member of APNAC, a senior member. And then next to him is our Vice Chair, Honorable Jagagwa, the Vice Chair of APNAC. You can see him there. Next to him is our Professor and lay bishop, Professor Jacqueline Adwar. Coming on to the other side, Member of Parliament Beatrice Adagala, Madam Beatrice Adagala, and Ms. Honorable Fatima, isn't it? Fatima Ibrahim, also a member. And next to him, we call him Japolo. Honorable Mushangi, I always forget that name. Also a member of the APNAC team. I myself am, yeah, the APNEC, the secretariat that we have, if you can stand up, please. Yes, there at the end, is Ben Muniki, and our executive director, Mr. Elijah. He's also the executive director acting for WFP. Next to him is our intern. Her name is Faith. Just joined us recently. And next to her, the other intern of ours, his name is Mariam. And that is APNAC. We have one or two others, but we seem to have lost them. They're coming back. And I think one other member of staff is, we've been hit by food poisoning, I think. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Shante, for introducing members present. Online, our participants are still getting us to know where they're from, but we have good representation from civil society organizations, from our development partners that will be present, and of course, our partners in this session, global financial integrity. Lakshmi, if you can hear me, would you like to say a word?
No, certainly. Thank you so much. Good morning on this rather excellent morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Lakshmi Kumar. I'm the Policy Director at Global Financial Integrity. Over the last year and a half, we've worked in conjunction with TI Kenya, and it's been sort of an incredible collaborative experience. And I think sort of, what we are trying to do in the forthcoming panel is to really look at the document that we have jointly produced, because we think it's a valuable tool, irrespective of the kind of stakeholder that you are, whether you are from civil society, whether you're from government, whether you're a journalist. It is informative material, which I think when we are talking about issues like corruption or illicit financial flows, they can often feel technical and complex. And I think what the document that we've both sort of put together and tries to do here is to ensure that there's enough, it's not just technical recommendations, but there's enough of a story and narrative and examples where people can feel that this touches everyday lives and it connects to every part of your life. And that's really, and it's been fantastic working with the team at TI Kenya. And we look forward to sort of continued hard work and collaboration, but also I will say this now as a forewarning, the very active engagement, I hope, from everyone on Zoom, as well as everyone present today in person at the meeting. Thank you so much, and back to you.
Thank you, Lakshmi, for that brief. Without further ado, and apologies to our online participants if you are not here, but I trust you're following along. I'd like to invite Sheila Matinde, the Executive Director of TI Kenya, to make the opening remarks, and then we'll usher in the second part of this session. Sheila, if you can hear me. Can you hear me, Sheila?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear, Harriet. I hope I'm audible as well.
Yes.
But good morning, everyone. Honorable MPs led by the chair of APNAC, Honorable Shakil Shabir, and other members of APNAC, our panelists for the day and speakers, development partners here with us, our other stakeholders. Good morning. It really gives me great pleasure to meet with you, albeit remotely. I was unable to travel to Sagana, and I'm feeling, what do they call it, FOMO, fear of missing out. I feel like I'm really missing out a lot, apart from, I hope, the Honorable Shakil's comments on food poisoning. are not serious, and that everyone is safe and well, and that we'll be able to interact throughout the day, because I think we have quite a good agenda coming up. But I think, as Lakshmi has said, and we're really grateful for the partnership that we've had with GFI to implement this project, to build capacity and conduct advocacy in regard to illicit financial flows in Kenya. I think it's really important. As she said, it's something that can seem so technical, and I think that's why, or that's really the reason that motivated us to really think around simplifying that kind of information, so that people are able to walk along with us as we talk about the effects of illicit financial flows, and really forge partnerships moving forward to be able to deal with this challenge. And really the goal of the project is to also promote legislation that will enhance the government's ability to curtail IFFs and boost domestic resource collection. And I think it's really critical, especially at this time, having just gone through 1 year of COVID-19, and you can see the impact it has had on our economy. And I think as a country, Kenya, we are worried also. We're swaddled in a high level of public debt, and we need all our monies intact. We need all our resources intact to be able to sustain the economy and assure us of development moving forward. I think we've also made progress. It's good to also identify, as much as we've had challenges, but we've also made progress, particularly in regard to beneficial ownership transparency so far. And I think part of this project is also to raise awareness as we build capacity and ensure progressive legislation to enhance beneficial ownership in Kenya. Sometimes you move one step forward, but then you also move 2 steps back. And I think we need to ensure that we are consequently marching forward and not backwards, even as much as we have made progress. I think we can all attest to the severe effects of IFFs in developing countries. The outflows remain of critical concern, given the inadequate growth, high levels of poverty, and also the level of corruption in developing countries, because these undermine the country's economic, political, and social structures. It weakens our country's institutions and also the capability to fight poverty. I don't think I need to deal so much on that. We've seen that especially in the last 1 year. And our resource needs for social services, for infrastructure, and investment also underscore the importance of really stemming IFFs from the country and the region at large. As Lakshmi has said, that one of the things we're also aiming to do is really illustrate the impact of and effects of IFFs. I think in regard to corruption, we've seen it all in Kenya. Looking at some of our really big corruption scandals, like the Anglo leasing, where, for instance, we saw we had a contract, for instance, of 2.4 billion, in which the contract was never delivered, and the companies that were awarded contracts were phantom farms, with a series of security-related scandals involving 18 state security contracts, collectively worth about 55 billion shillings, awarded to companies with undisclosed owners. We saw recently, well, now it's almost 5 years, even if we've not really gotten justice for it, the NYS scandal, though we also appreciate that there have been attempts to recover some of those monies from some of the suspects. But again, another case of corruption, where we saw a lot of money being transferred from NYS into bank accounts and phantom companies that are used as front companies to steal from Kenyans. I think more recently with the COVID-19, we've had our fair share of scandals in Kenya. Yet to get justice. We are still holding our breath, waiting for a resolution and for action and for justice from the theft that happened through the KEMSA procurement, but also another example of how we've lost resources in this country. So I think it's something, a critical conversation that we need to have, because IFFs have really reduced public resources that are available for service provision and other programs, infrastructure and so on in this country. And given where we are as a country, we really need, as I said, those resources here. So I think this workshop today is an opportunity for us. One, as civil society organizations, I see a number of our partners from Oxfam, John Kitui, I see you here, from ICJ, from Diaconia. I can see Christine also online, and others, and TISA as well, some of our very great partners that we've worked on issues around corruption. I think it's an important moment for us as CSOs working on cross-cutting thematic areas in regard to IFFs to discuss opportunities for advocacy and also policy change through dialogue on IFFs and also beneficial ownership. I think it's also an opportunity for us to explore how the government can also be able to discern the value that IFFs and beneficial ownership policy can have in addressing a variety of crimes beyond the financial space. It's also an opportunity for us to get an appreciation, including of international trends within the IFF agenda, the best practices out there. And I think it's important also to inculcate those best practices as we continue onwards with our advocacy and trying to address IFFs in the country. And I also, lastly, and I know that there are many other opportunities that we have, but I think another key one for me is also an opportunity to be able to identify unlegislated policy areas and possible ways to enhance beneficial ownership transparency in Kenya. So there are useful sessions to set this conversation rolling that are coming up. So I'll stop talking and let us continue on with the sessions. But more importantly, today we launched the recently released information fact sheets that we that we tried to produce to examine the nexus between IFFs, environmental justice, beneficial ownership, and trade misinvoicing. And we hope that from this workshop, there'll be greater awareness and engagement on IFFs to influence, the required change moving forward. I'll stop there so that we can get to the meat of the workshop, but really look forward to really fruitful deliberations in the day. Thank you very much. Asanteni sana.
Thank you, Sheila, for those remarks. And I think that sets a good pace for us to move on to the next session. I will hand it over to Philip Mutio to take us through what to expect in the next session. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. Actually, you are not that audible, but at least I managed to pick one or two. So I think you mean that is my turn to start the discussion. So, so I will start by stating that probably my name has already been shared, Benjamin Maina, working with JZ, and I'm glad to be with the team and for the fact sheet that was prepared, which is very elaborate and captures a lot of details, especially concerning our country, Kenya. So for me, it will be very brief to share probably the IFF in the region and just probably narrow down to what is happening in Kenya, and then we can move on with the discussion. Of course, IFF is one of those topics that has not been shared a lot in other quarters because of maybe fear or something like that, or because it's also a generator of resources for some of us. And with that, we tend to shy away because we still want to continue benefiting from the same concept. So with my discussion, I will actually share in two elements, and one would be capturing those IFFs that are generated in the region and also more so probably in the country, and also the IFFs that come in from other countries to the region and Kenya, so that we can see how this actually works. So for IFFs coming in the region, first of all, we look at those what we call predicate offenses, and more so these will be in relation to money laundering, because these monies that are generated, people want to hide them or maybe disguise them in one way or another so that they can benefit from the same. So the predicate offenses are the ones that generate the monies. And of course, one of the key ones is corruption. And with that, I will not want to belabor much because most scandals have been mentioned, NYS 1, NYS 2, the Golden Bag for the history, and of course, the new ones that are coming up, like for Kenya, the KEMSA and the likes, which are developing. So corruption is a generator of illicit financial flows, and with that, people want to benefit from the same by probably repatriating those resources to other countries, or probably just invest in the country. So that is one of the leading predicate offense in terms of generation of IFFs. Of course, the second one is counterfeiting and piracy of products. And this, I'm sure that probably one of us or most of us have suffered this. Pharmaceutical products, drugs that we get from the chemist, in most cases, they are not genuine. And with this, people are trying to counterfeit so that they get money out of it to try and actually enrich themselves. For the counterfeit products, the list is so big. Of course, the phones that we use, even our computers that we use, and so on. And with this, especially in Kenya, we've seen most of those drugs being burned down, or pharmaceuticals being accumulated, and there is a call to actually ban the same, and that has been happening. But of course, that has not been won yet, and this is one of the areas that is still actually affecting us. And if you look at the statistical data, especially from transnational crime and the developing world, of course, it states that about 923 billion to 1.1 trillion of money annually is generated around issues of counterfeiting. So it is a very serious issue that we need to be looking into. Of course, counterfeiting is not just for products. We've also seen counterfeiting in terms of currency, and this has happened a lot. Of course, if you live in Kenya, around the areas of Kilimani, monies have been recovered in cash, which are counterfeit money, and you wonder the motivation for this. How does it happen, and how do they manage to generate money out of this? Of course, it is the issue of cartels, and sometimes they connive with those people probably feeding the ATM machines, and they exchange with the genuine notes and so on, and with that they are able to generate the illicit financial money that goes around. Environmental crimes, of course, that is also an area. Recently in Kenya, in Narok, there were a number of people who were arrested with a live pangolin. I don't know whether most of us watched that news. So if it is getting to that level, and we all know that pangolin is one of those wildlife that is actually mostly taken across and sold, and proceeds generated from it. So those are some of the things that are happening. And if you look at the reports, probably in the region also, ISAMLAG also developed a special typology report on poaching and illegal trade wildlife products. And it actually estimated that about US dollar 7.8 and 10 billion. And this is actually excluding fisheries and timber. Of course, we know also the kind of timber that is also smuggled and generates illicit financial flows. But if we are going to the tune of 7.8 to 10 billion, and this is within ISAMLAG countries in Africa, those are just 18 countries, which Kenya is also a party to it. If we also just go back to the transnational crime and developing world statistics, it indicates that about 5 to 23 billion of money generated annually out of these issues of wildlife crimes and illegal trade around wildlife. Of course, sometimes it happens in our own eyes while we are watching.
Hello, Benjamin. Sorry to interrupt you, but I think your time is coming to close, please, because we got some more panelists. But if you could wind up, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that is for the environmental crime. The tax crime, of course, that has well been elaborated in the fact sheet. the human trafficking and the cybercrime. We've seen the issues of the phone. But where do this money get into, especially in the country? Of course, we've seen in the real estate agents, buildings coming up, and that is one of the areas that is easily can take a lot of money, and you can launder a lot of money within the real estate. The motor vehicles dealership, we've seen in Kenya everywhere. There is a motor vehicle dealership coming up, and probably this is one of the areas that deals with this. Precious metals for those countries that have gold and so on, and that is an area that also is generating and also making sure that they stash away the monies. Of course, in Kenya, we have had a number of cases. Everyone is aware of the Chris Okemo and Gishuru case involving Jassy. So it does not necessarily mean that these monies are only being put in the country, but they are repatriated to other foreign countries, and the investment is cross-border. So if anything were to happen and for us to win this war, then definitely we'll have to work as a group and also as a region to see that we combat the illicit financial flows. Otherwise, I appreciate the effort that has been put in the document and the recommendations that are proposed. And I believe that if we work together and implement the same, we'll be able to curtail the issues of illicit financial flows. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benjamin, for that wonderful conversation about IFFs and the region. And now we go to Honorable Shakil Shabir, MP for Kisumu East. He's going to talk to us about the IFFs and the issues around gender and IFFs and corruption. Thank you, Honorable Shakil.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. No? Yes, so for a moment as the Honorable Shakil comes. Yeah.
Okay.
That have it there, so I can take off my mask because they can't see me. All right, thank you very much. This is Shakil Shabir. I'm the Member of Parliament for Kisumu East and the Chairman of the African Parliamentarians Against Corruption. Can you hear me? Okay. Also, I'm on the board of the Global Parliamentarians Network Against Corruption called GOPAC. Corruption and illicit finance, illicit financial flows go hand in hand. Corruption is just one of the fallbacks or one of the results of what is illicit funding, illegal funding, theft. I don't really like to call it corruption, just theft basically. And corruption and illicit fund of transfer, as I said, go hand in hand. And they basically, we've sung this until we are blue in the face, undermines the sustainable development of an institution of our state. Illicit funding is not new. It was started with the colonialists and it has continued. Now in a very different form, it is mutated many times. And then we had those so-called fantastic organizations they used to call transnational corporations. And then in economics, when I was doing economics, they started with some real term called transfer pricing. Transfer pricing basically was illicit illegal fund transfer between organizations, between countries, taking away more than you should do and putting it into another country. Transfer pricing was actually legal. It has been legal for some time, that you charge more so that you don't pay tax in the country. Cryptocurrency has also helped this so-called illicit funding. We as parliamentarians against corruption have been trying to fight all these issues We have, some of us here been in this fight for at least 15 years. And I remember very clearly when we were in Panama, the greatest help to us in the fight against corruption was WikiLeaks. Guess what happened to WikiLeaks? They closed it down. What happened to Panama Papers? They closed it down. So we are wondering whether the Western world or the so-called our benefactors really want to help us in some of these things, but because they closed them down. We were in Panama. We talked about the STAR initiative, stolen asset recovery. And of course, all the countries, Kenya was one of the first ones who signed that mandate, signed that agreement, but we haven't really taken it further. But then we also found that those guys were talking very strongly about the STAR initiative, stolen asset recovery, is illicit transfer funds. They're the ones who are not helping us. When you talk about Geneva, you talk about Switzerland, you talk about England, you talk about those special, the islands where their funds are hidden. They don't bring them too fast to us. What's happening is we are now illicit funding is now started taking it's just an old term, an old thing, brought with the new words and whatever. And we are wondering how we are going to be able to do something about this. We can't do it alone. Illicit funding, as you said, there are three types. There is that one which is illegal funding. There's one which is illicit, funding that is for, generated by legal acts, and all those comments that we've had. There's that one which is called trade misfinancing. Yes, nobody talks about that. There was a time I was being told by a friend of ours that the drugs for AIDS, but 20 years ago, 22 years ago, used to cost something like $450. I think, yes, misinvoicing, yes. They were costing something like $45 or $450 per treatment. 400, something like that. Or was it $45? Now it has come down to less than 80 cents. Why? Misinvoicing. Then, of course, there's this issue of drugs, what we call generic drugs versus what we call branded drugs. So we're wondering, sometimes we wonder whether this illicit funding is actually a mysterious way of the Western banking world to hide certain assets because they get them there. We were in Vienna with 3 or 4 of us here. And guess what? The Attorney General of Jersey came looking for us because they heard we were from Kenya and asked us straight off, my brothers, what can you do? Why can't the Attorney General of Kenya help us to expedite this return of the two people they were looking for? So sometimes we wonder, some of our partners really want to help us. The systems fail. Like terrorist funding, why cannot we have a more serious approach to illegal financing and drugs? With drugs, financing of drugs, they're very serious all over the world. But when we come to issues of Anglo-leasing, issues of the export of corruption, and another one that they now call it development financing. Development finance is also when our development partners want to build a railway for us or whatever, 30% or 40% of it actually goes on the railway. The rest goes into somebody else's accounts. What we are after is strengthening of our governance systems. We want to talk about the export of corruption. We want to talk about those so-called projects that have done nothing for us. And I think we ourselves must look at the way we are going to ensure that we raise our voice every time. I mean, I'm a member of parliament, and I have no hesitation to tell you that I am totally astounded and embarrassed by our own PIC, Parliamentary Investment Committee, the way people are coming in and talking ridiculous that God showed them how to come and steal. And our people are listening to them. I mean, there were 20 members of parliament sitting there listening to this rubbish that's coming through. What does it mean? It makes us look like comedians all over the world. I think that we need to take more serious action. And now I do also believe that sometimes we need to be very more particular. And I remember, and we in memory of our president of Tanzania, who had no time for corruption whatsoever. That's the sort of thing we need. But we are also saying, as APNAC, we are here to develop, we are here to lobby, we are here to talk, we are here to agitate, to make sure that there is the less impunity, the better, the more serious the penalties, the better, and that we want to talk to our development partners, whether it is the West, whether it is the East. I mean, it's not only the East, the Aurora Dam and the Italians, the Eurobond, all of these are illicit funding. And you know who's doing it is our Western world. And they are telling us that they know they're holier than thou. They come over here, they have dirt and taken a few leaders into their pocket. And as a result, the majority of our Wananchi are suffering. We have high taxes now. Yesterday, with the grace of God, and thank you for all our members of parliament who said no increase in taxes and other things, and we actually nearly shot down the supplementary or the division of revenue, and we intend to go back. There are the times that we must forget that what will get personally should be overridden by what will be for the general people or for the people we serve. So as much as we'll keep saying it, and we're doing it slowly, it's a small step at a time. And I plead with our partners that we will keep bringing these issues out. We as APNAC have been we've been working with the STAR initiative, beneficial interest, grant corruption, and all those issues. But we also want strength from the other side. Where is cryptocurrency in this whole thing? Cryptocurrency is the backbone of illicit funding. Why can't the Western world, why can't this thing be banned totally? So we're wondering why, and we're wondering how we're going to do this. And we hope and pray that as a result of discussions that we're having with this and the great work that our partner, our twin, TI has been our twin, we were born together. And we will stay together. And we hope that we shall be able to make a difference, even if it's small. I always say this for TI. TI and APNAC together in 2015 stopped the Prime Minister of Malaysia from opening the anti-corruption conference. We can do this, and we need to do this by taking small actions and hoping that there will be a wave, and the wave will come. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Honorable Shakil, for that highlight and the key issues to raise about corruption and how best can be able to deal with those issues as a country and as a region. Now we go to Ms. Mary Onkore, who is a tutorial fellow at the University of Nairobi, and she'll be talking to us today about IFF's agenda, the issue of women and the role that they play and how illicit financial flows do affect them disproportionately. Thank you very much. Welcome, Mary Onkore. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Mary Ongore, tutorial fellow, University of Nairobi, and I'll be talking about illicit financial flows and gender. I believe it's a very pertinent issue, often ignored or put to the side. And it is essential that we understand how gender differences result in a different impact felt based following from illicit financial flows. So I'll start with giving a few stylized differences in economic activity between men and women as a prelude to explaining exactly what the gendered effects or differences in effects between illicit financial flows are. So first is that there are differences between men and women in paid employment. Women generally participate less in the labor force, and this is despite the fact that they contribute much more to unpaid work. As a result, it's much easier for them to enter the workforce and exit the workforce much more often than women, and they therefore do not get the protections that formal employment afford the labor force. And then the second difference between men and women is in unpaid care work. The gender roles in society often result in women being automatically the ones to do unpaid care work. That involves, for example, taking care of the elderly, the sick, and the young. And again, as a result, it's much easier for them to be kicked out of paid employment, significantly reducing the, again, protections afforded by formal employment, and just basically having an income, and further reinforcing the fact that they will, for longer periods, remain in poverty. And then we have a difference in consumption expenditure, again, between men and women. And this largely is based on the fact that the bargaining power amongst household members means that women are more likely to spend money on food, education, and healthcare in order to enhance the well-being of their children. In addition to that, because they tend to be the world's poor, unfortunately, that means that the relative prices of goods will affect women in completely different ways. So having illustrated what the gender differences between men and women are in economic activity, we then move on to understand how what the gender effects of IFFs are. So the first one is obviously the fact that IFFs result in governments losing much needed funding for public services such as education, sexual and reproductive health, maternal health care. And additionally, they also have less funding at their disposal for social protection. This affects women in much worse ways than it does men. Again, like I said, women are the world's poor. In fact, majority of them are living on, majority of them form part of the statistic of people living on less than $1 a day. And as a result, if there's no funding for public services, it means that one, women will have to drop out of the labor force in order to provide such services and plug the gaps, especially in healthcare, taking care again of the sick and the young. Then, in addition, we'll have, as a result of them having to drop out of the labor force, again, their poverty status is significantly reinforced. And another impact is that, well, because women are, generally more the world's poor, where social protection is not adequately funded, then they're the ones who lose out the most because they're most dependent on those services. So this impact is felt in two ways, where one, the government can't allocate enough funding to healthcare. And then the other is where even when money is allocated to, for example, public services, the money is not spent on what it's budgeted for. and through corruption, and ultimately, which results in capital flows outside the continent. You find that whatever public services were to be provided don't get provided, and then, like we said, women suffer more. So if we look at the report, we have those examples. There's the estimates provided there that make it quite real how this problem is. The first is, about losing, Kenya being estimated to lose 8% of its government revenue through trade misinvoicing. That is almost, that amounts to more than 900 million US dollars. And as a result, that significantly makes some inroads into what the government can provide in terms of public services. Following that, we have the effects of the lack of funding on initiatives that are meant to promote gender equality. Now, traditionally, this is seen as an important, not a priority, and where there are limits on the amount of money governments have to spend, then these are the first initiatives to be cut out and to be set aside because they're viewed as low priority, whereas in actual sense, they make real impacts onto whole families. If you change a woman's life, you change a whole family, you change her children's lives, her husband's life, and her extended family's life as well. So that is another impact of IFFs. It slows down development or progress being made in gender equality initiatives. Then in addition to that, IFFs also affect women's employment. This is because IFFs will more often than not lead to constraints in public resources, and as a result, higher rates of unemployment. And like we've said, where because women tend to enter and exit the workforce quite a bit more than men do, women are the first to lose out, and that affects families as well, because if they're the ones providing essential essential expenditure on food, healthcare, then the families suffer as well. So in addition to that, we have the effect of IFFs on taxation and fiscal policy. And here, where governments don't have enough money to finance their budgets, they often administer regressive tax reforms that increase consumption taxes that are levied. Consumption taxes put a significantly extra burden on poorer households because the poor have a higher propensity to spend. More often than not, if you get $1 and you're desperate, you ultimately will have to spend on food, kerosene, firewood or charcoal or whatever it is. Those who are wealthier, generally, whatever income they get is not entirely immediately spent away, right? So given that the women have a higher, women will be more disproportionately affected by increase in consumption taxes, then IFFs have a direct impact on their livelihoods. Now, finally, slightly different will be the impact of human trafficking on gender equality. So IFFs resulting from transnational crime, again, disproportionately affect women. Why? Because women are largely the victims of human trafficking and sex trafficking as well. And unfortunately, as it has been highlighted in the report, Kenya is a well-known transit point for trafficking of persons, and the figures compared between the number of men and women trafficked. It's astounding. So those are included in the report, and I won't touch on that. I think I'll wind up there because I see that I've gone over my my time. But having looked at the report, the recommendations are excellent. I think a lot of activism needs to be done by way of showing how important it is that gender issues are mainstreamed, particularly when it comes to things such as gender budgeting. Although we have NGEC having adopted or having facilitated the government to adopt gender responsive budgeting, on paper, it sounds fantastic, but in reality, it's hardly practiced both at the counties and well, at the counties in particular. And even at national government, it's done on a very limited scale, despite the fact that it would have significant benefits for the country as a whole. And with that being said, that's the end of my short presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Onkore. I think we go next to Lakshmi Kumar, Global Financial Integrity. Lakshmi, for you to talk to us about organized crime and environmental justice. Welcome.
Certainly. Thank you, Philip. So I think what I don't want to do, because we have 8 minutes, is to sort of really go into and walk you through every example that is in the fact sheets. I think the idea that when GFI and TI Kenya had in putting together this pamphlet is that, because very often we are trying to say, why should you enact policy reform? Why should you pass a new law? The question often is that, give me an example, give me something that's happened in real life that makes sense. And so what we wanted to do is to show that when you're talking about laws that affect illicit financial flows, or when you talk about the value of beneficial ownership, there is not an area of life that you can touch where you do not see an impact. And I think that's what everything we've heard from Sheila, from Philip, to Benjamin, and Mary has sort of encapsulated that. And when you talk about sort of organized crime and environmental justice, they don't stand, none of these categories, which is corruption, beneficial ownership, the impact on IFFs on gender, they don't stand alone, nor are they separate. They're very much all weave together to form one story. And so an example that is an example of organized crime is very much an example also of its impact, of the impact on women. So when you talk about human trafficking, it is an example both of sort of the impact of organized crime and how they're able to, organized crime groups are able to sort of monetize the sale of women and then use that money in turn to sort of fund other things. And that's a great example. Now, I think Kenya and like a lot of other countries within the African continent are incredibly rich in natural resources. And the conversation often is restricted to mining and oil. But the truth is that there are so many other natural resources that are just as equally, if not more valuable, that often go under the radar, but long-term have a huge impact on the Kenyan government's ability to collect taxable income, which then can sort of feed into sustainable development goals, other government initiatives that the country wants to take, because I think as we've sort of revealed, very often the lowest priority, which is the first things that tend to get hit, are health, education, and women tend to be at sort of at the back of it. And so if you go through the pamphlet we've put together, you will see examples and you can see how they connect, how an example for organized crime connects to gender, how organized crime also ties into corruption, how corruption ties into natural resource. There are so many threads that are woven in together here. So I just wanted to sort of talk about a couple of things that I think are interesting, which are uncommon. Kenya's had sort of a difficult relationship with being sort of on the receiving end of terrorist attacks, and especially sort of, the activities of Al-Shabaab. Now, what is interesting is that Al-Shabaab makes over 2.5 billion Kenyan shillings a year through the sale of charcoal. Now, how does this take place? It does occur through the facilitation, one, of a terrorist group Two, through the exploitation of Kenya's natural resources. Three, because there's an element of corruption, petty bribery, people turning a blind eye. Now, similarly, when you talk about sort of fishing on the Kenyan coastline, I think this is incredibly valuable because you have the story of Kenya's neighbor, which is Somalia, which is, has a whole host of institutional and governance issues, but also a lot of its issues with piracy came from the fact that they were unable to control and navigate Somalia's territorial waters, which meant that there were these large shipping vessels that came that average Somali fishermen no longer being able to compete turned to piracy. And that is a worst case example of how ignoring something that's a valuable natural resource can long-term turn into a deeply problematic crime. And there is I think a fascinating, and also, I think we have an illustrator also has joined us today on the Zoom panel, who did a beautiful and simply lovely job illustrating sort of the impact of fishing and sort of organized crime activity, especially through foreign nationals that have come into Kenya and that are illegally fishing Kenya's waters and make millions and billions of dollars. And very often it is impossible for the Kenyan government to do anything about it, simply because these ships are registered in 6 different locations through multiple companies where it's impossible to find beneficial ownership. And so what really underscores the narrative of what we've put together is whether you're talking about, and there are examples that you have here, when you talk about the sale of timber and its movement to Uganda, you talk about human trafficking, you talk about wildlife poaching, which in Kenya is which is again a crime in the millions of dollars globally. But what was interesting, and I think in the example that we have here, is the way that they were able to hide wildlife poaching is they set up a fake tea company, because Kenya is known for its tea. Also, it's known for its tea exports. And they hid all the ivory in tea bags. And so knowing the beneficial ownership, knowing sort of the actual trading activity of this tea company would have helped Kenyan government authorities not just tackle the wildlife crime, the corruption, but sort of essentially in this case, it's a case of fraudulent trading and fraudulent invoicing of non-existent tea exports, which never really existed in Kenya. And so there is this crisscrossing that we see evident. My favorite example by far without question here is the National Youth Service example, in that simply because it was so blatant and egregious, in that you were able to have a contract that was worth 10 million Kenyan shillings for beef, but in reality it meant that every single person who received the benefit of the program had to consume 66 kilos of beef per day, which is an insurmountable challenge without question. But again, like all of these examples touch real life, but they all go back to one clear there's a clear node, and which is, I think, is the real center and the main thrust of the argument, which is we have several recommendations, but the real central thrust is that all of these crimes, and this is important for all the stakeholders in the room, is whether your portfolio is focusing on health, human services, education, women's rights, the environment, no matter what your portfolio is, all of these issues are tied by the common thread that they all have an illicit financial component, which allows these crimes to function. And so tracking that financial component, tracking those companies, tracking those assets through which it is hidden is the real success story. And that's where, whether you're a journalist, whether you're civil society working on youth rights, women's rights, you're working on environmental protection, you're working on like the way we GFI and TI Kenya do on financial transparency. All of it is, we're all tied together under the same umbrella, which is using better financial tools to tackle this. And with that, I know I'm on my 8 minutes, and I think this is the perfect segue to have, I know Harriet talk incredibly in detail and with sort of a depth of experience and sort of everything to do with beneficial ownership. So I will end there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lakshmi, for that conversation about the issues and spoken about. Now, We welcome Harriet. She talked to us about IFFs and the beneficial ownership and where we are in Kenya at the moment.
Thank you, Philip, for that. I am under siege and threat from Philip that I have strictly 8 minutes to do my presentation. But because we've had previous speakers that have put into context issue of financial flows, I think then my job is relatively easy to talk about beneficial ownership and why it matters in this discussion. And this is a subject that is really close to my heart. One, because in my wildest dreams, and I work for an organization that has a vision of a corruption-free Kenya. In my wildest dreams, I never thought that Kenya would be a country that passes a legislation that requires companies to tell us who are the owners. I mean, it was a shock. It happened in 2017. You know, and we're like, wait, what just happened? Right? So, sorry? Yes. So I think it was the reason I'm saying that is the psyche of corruption in Kenya. You know, the speculation behind who are the people behind this corruption. And for us to pass such a legislation, indeed it was a huge impact. So beneficial ownership, in the simplest terms, is who ultimately owns a company. Or you can't see? Sorry, or no, so I need to move closer. Wow, okay.
Harriet, it might be worthwhile repeating everything you've covered so far because I don't think any of us could hear you on the...
Didn't hear anything?
No, sorry, we couldn't hear anything at all.
Wow, okay. Can you hear me now?
We could hear you just a second ago, and now it again sounds very distant and we can't hear you.
Okay, so can you hear me now?
Crystal clear.
Oh, okay. Sorry, this is where I was standing. Actually, and the way I had done some anecdotes on, on corruption in the country, but my audience in the room, they had me, sorry. So I'll just start by saying, you know, simply describing what beneficial ownership is. This is basically the ultimate owner, the person who truly controls a company, the natural owner of a company. That is the simplest way I can explain who a beneficial owner is. And the reason why we even need to come up with such a term is because there is this culture, and not just in Kenya, of people setting up companies, you know, wanting to hide behind the veil, wanting to be somewhere in the files, not to be known, but having people faces in front or the ones bearing the face of those companies, and then going to do illegal things, nefarious things with those companies, and therefore they remain anonymous, right? So the concept of beneficial ownership is basically trying to tell us who ultimately owns these companies. In terms of illicit financial flows, the previous speakers have really enumerated what this is. It can come from corruption, it can come from the trade misinvoicing, tax evasion, and so on and so forth. So the reason why beneficial ownership is important in the discussion of illicit financial flows is because we actually get to know the people who ultimately own the companies that are responsible for these either crimes or the flows themselves. I will take you to, for Kenyans, if you can understand, and just directly from a scandal that Lakshmi mentioned, NYS1. If you can recall, and the members of parliament, I think it was the PAC committee of the National Assembly, they did a lot of hearings because Kenyans were mesmerized by the scandal. And if you can all remember, a lady, Josephine Kapura, hairdresser, that was at the front or the face of that entire scandal. One, because she registered a company And I think in under 3 months, she was able to get a contract. Her company was able to get contracts worth close to $1 billion. And Kenya started asking, well, a hairdresser, and nothing wrong with being a hairdresser, absolutely nothing wrong. But Kenyans had the thought that indeed, the company she was representing, the company she was the face of, had people behind. And I'm not going to speculate who the people behind were, because, well, although it is public information, there were a lot of speculations as to who was the face or who was the ultimate owner of the company that Kafura represented. And that the NYS one happened before we got the law in Kenya. So that already puts in context why it is very, very important that we get such laws in the country and why we get to demystify the people behind the veil. Of course, that case, it's Kafura in court and several others, including some, I think, directors or managers of the National Youth Service itself, but there were politically exposed persons, if I can use that technical term, and very high government officials that never were cleared or have never been brought to book because we were not able to have that clear link that they were indeed the beneficial owners of the company. So ideally, having beneficial ownership information of companies helps investigators, law enforcement agencies get to know the people behind Kafura, for example, in this instance. Like we get to know that indeed it was not Kafura pulling the strings, the people behind her are able to, investigators are able to tell us who they are, prosecutors are actually able to bring to book the people that are actually responsible for this. Again, the other thing, if you look at public procurement in this country, there are a lot of, and most of these scandals are related to public procurement. Again, it's usually this group, politically exposed persons or people, high-ranking government officials who are not meant to be doing business with government because, you know, the laws that we have, a Public Officer Ethics Act, Leadership and Integrity Act, even Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, talking of a conflict of interest. Ideally, you're not meant to be doing business with government, but we find some of these people set up companies with the fronts, with directors that, you know, they're drivers, they're house girls, they're cooks, they're cousins, or their grandmother's neighbor. They set up companies, and these are their the directors. But then at the end, behind there, and because they have access to internal documents within the procuring entities, they create a situation where they've locked out legitimate business owners, small, you know, legitimate, and this is very good for the private sector. Legitimate business owners are locked out of doing business with government because there's a crew of people already serving in government and getting a decent income that are determined to lock out everybody else from getting that a share of business. And of course, and Kenya has had its fair share of Ponzi schemes or pyramid schemes and gold issues, you know, people setting up businesses with the sole purpose of fleecing Kenya. And again, we never get to know who owns these companies. We own the directors, and then the directors, you know, even when they're being arrested, they'll be like, I'll be out in two hours. Phone calls will be made, I'll be out. So we never get to know the people who set up these companies to that, you know, are set up to either commit crimes or with the sole purpose of fleecing innocent wananchi. So having such a legislation or having beneficial ownership transparency legal framework is key in this regard. So as I mentioned in the beginning, which I'm now told you we missed out on, so we do have legislation on beneficial ownership in Kenya, an amendment to the Companies Act that was done in 2017. But because of the way we do laws in this country, we were not able to start collecting information on beneficial owners until we got regulations, which we did, and thank you very much to Parliament for that. The regulations were gazetted in February of 2020. So now the government of Kenya, through the Business Registration Service, the company registrar, now all companies registered in the Republic of Kenya are now filing a register. In addition to a register of their directors, they are now filing a register of their beneficial owners. The ultimate owners of these companies is now being filed with the state. It was our desire as civil society organizations, you know, even the common wananchi, to have this register available to the public. Unfortunately, it is not. It is only available to law enforcement agencies, but that's a step in the right direction. That is, you know, law enforcement agencies will be able to tell us who, if it was back in the days of NYS1, or even the KEMSA inquiry that is happening now by the Public Accounts Committee, they have access to this information and they'll be able to tell us who ultimately own these companies that are doing business with government. So in that regard, having a register, having information about who ultimately own businesses or companies that do business in this country is definitely a step in the right direction. But of course, I will not talk about some of the things that need to be strengthened with that legislation, but just to acknowledge that we have made a step. And this will transform the anti-corruption landscape. We may still be feeling that nothing is being done, but I think in 2-3 years' time, as government continues to collect this information, as law enforcement agencies continue to use this information to bring the perpetrators, the ultimate perpetrators to book, then we'll begin to see the landscape, the anti-corruption landscape changing. So allow me to stop there before it comes to physically put me out, but I hope I've enumerated the link between beneficial ownership and illicit financial. Thank
you. Thank you, Harriet, for that talk about our country, where we are with beneficial ownership. And now we open the session for the panel. We expect, we are looking forward to hearing from our members of parliament who are key in some of those legislation and working very committed to fighting corruption and dealing with issues in parliament as legislators and people who hold key positions when it comes to ensuring that the three systems of government work: the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. So welcome, members, and the floor is now open. We have an open session. Thank you. And I think we can start with the chair of APNAC, start us off. And I think you will have to. Yes, please, Honorable Shakil.
I hope this is audible. Yes, you know, I want to talk about beneficial ownership. Actually, when we were discussing it 15 years ago, or even 10 years ago, even yesterday, we realized it's not beneficial ownership that's important, because even beneficial ownership is hidden. So you go through different levels of ownership and different shell companies and different this and that. It's the beneficial controller. Who controls this beneficial organization? It might be, the guy is controlling it might be a cleaner sitting somewhere, or a tea person. And we've seen in very many organizations that, I think there is one in the Ministry of Finance. He was a tea maker, he has got billions of shillings. So he was the controller, beneficial controller. So I think when we're looking at these figurative descriptions, we need to start looking at it with an open mind. As much as we are talking about beneficial owner, and yes, it has come in, and yes, it has gone in the Companies Act, and it was very good for some of our members who actually, I mean, Honorable Jagaku, I remember, was very keen on some of these issues, especially when he was in JLAC. And some of the members of JLAC who worked very hard on the new companies registration and extra process. Those are automatic that are coming. But you know, we also need to, we have a very good credit reference bureau because the banks wanted a credit reference bureau. They're the worst organization when it comes to try and penalize people who do not have the capacity. But we would like to also have a corruption reference bureau. I remember my predecessor, Muscari Combo, we had a list of shame. And we want to start that list of shame. But we are looking for partners that we will talk about a reference bureau on corruption. TI, and I think we've all got these things. You're talking about the national NYS scandal. Actually, the NYS scandal started way back. It is not the NYS one with the Waiguru and Josephine Kobura. And I'm mentioning it. Yes, I'm mentioning the names. And they're now the governors of so-and-so. It even went before that. There was a colleague, a friend, somebody I know of since childhood. The Nayo bus scandal, the Nayo taxi scandal. These were all part and parcel of the same sort of thing. There was the Africa Games scandal, and some of these Ponzi scandals that have been falling apart. So what I'm saying is, we as the army or the special soldiers or those who wish to bring sanity in our country and attack corruption in the little we can, we must continue to do so. We must not be taken aback by fancy words and fancy schemes, whether it is here or it is at OECD or wherever it is. And I'm not saying they are very good partners of ours, OECD. But sometimes when we go over there and we are talking, I remember when we were talking about the STAR initiative, and we were being addressed by some very classy advocates from solicitors from Switzerland and Europe, telling us how they can try and recover some money for us. But when we looked at the amounts that they were asking, it was astronomical. And I remember, I think Mishmia Jodagwa was maybe with us, and maybe one of us when we went to stay in Geneva. And we went to stay in a hotel, and next to us was a beautiful big hotel. And we were told it was the then leader of, what is it, the late leader of Congo, and his hotel. And so, when we go to places like Geneva and others, we see all these guys, and even in England, all those guys who run away from here and are enjoying. I mean, I'm talking right now about Anglo leasing. The guys come and they smile in the court and get away, and they come and smile. So we had those, I now want to come back to the issue of some of our own committees. And I think that it's our job, and I know our speaker of the parliament is our chair of the African Secretariat of APNAC, and the vice chair of COPAC, the global organization. And I know that we are trying, with his help, to try and make the parliament to be self-regulated, to make the PAC back to be strong, directed, and effective, rather than being waffling over time and losing direction. So those are my comments, and I don't know whether I would want to ask if there's anybody else who would like to do this, but I would say that, as we said, every little thing matters, and even if it is one little step, and we can take that one little step today, it will matter. So let us make those little steps matter. Let's be proud that we had our little say in beneficial ownership. Let's be proud that we had our little say in grant corruption. Let's be proud that we had our little say in STAR initiative, the Panama Papers, and other issues. And those are the ways we will be able to make our point and make our country take it away from the issue of corruption. But I want to end up by saying one thing. When we talk about grand corruption, people keep quiet. And when TI comes up with a list, TI may say always comes as Kenya is so down there. But you know, there's the difference between corruption of survival and grand corruption. Grand corruption is killing the country. Corruption of survival can be dealt with. It will be dealt with the moment we know that we are paying our civil service and our police officers and our other officers correctly. And that's where the Salaries and Remuneration Commission has come in. I want to welcome my brother who has made a great impact on some of these things, Honorable Jude Jomo, and I know he will say something. But I think also we want to bring this issue of grand corruption versus corruption of survival. Let us not waste too much time on those little fish that can be dealt with. And finally, we as Kenya, I used to travel all over the world. We used to travel to Dubai. And you know, we traveled to certain countries, and Kenya was respected as a very, you know, honorable country. And Kenyans were given great respect. Still we are being given. But nowadays, you go to Dubai, we are lumped together with the Nigerians and the others. You know, at the one time when you used to go to Dubai in the Southern Africa, and they saw and they would ask, the moment it was a Kenyan, they knew this person was serious. Now we are being dumped together because what's happening is one or two of us are going and spoiling our name. I think we need to now recover. We need to bring back our ethos. We need to bring back our culture. We want to come back with the Kenyan DNA, and we want to know, we want people to know, and we want to redevelop our integrity with the world. Thank you. So that they know whether Kenyan is an honest person. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Shikio, for that wake-up call about what we need to do to make our country better on the issues we are discussing here today. I've got a few questions from the audience. One of them is from Ms. Gino at Global Compact Kenya. And she asks, are there plans to make beneficial ownership information open to the public and other interested groups? And we also have a question from Maureen Kariuki of Open Government Partnership. Keen here, what plans are in place to make the register open to the public? And that is the beneficial register. But before we answer those questions, and I welcome answers from the panel members and from everyone here, we want to welcome Honorable Judy Jomo for a quick to talk to us. He is a parliamentary caucus on economy and peace. You come after we have had the deputy chair of APNAC, Mr. Honorable Jagagwa. Welcome, Mr. Jagagwa. Honorable Jagagwa. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I need to first and foremost thank all the presenters who spoke this morning. Thank you for your comments. But I'll also go straight to my comments. There are not many. But I would wish to, I know we are part and parcel of the beneficial ownership bill or act that was enacted in Parliament, in the last Parliament. And we question maybe to the presenter, the good lady who made that presentation. How is it going to be enforced? Because you can simply incorporate a company, fill in the directorship, and fail to declare who the directors are, always the beneficial owner, always the driver or the mover. You just fill in your name as a promoter of the company and you leave it at that. Number two, we must also look at what we call the Ndego Commission, 1972. There was a Ndego Commission, 1972. I think that was a governor of the central bank. And he was appointed by the then president, and he came up with resolutions which allowed civil servants to trade in government business. So that commission's resolutions are still in force. And I think it's on the basis of one that civil servants are very familiar. Unless now we change those regulations, we come up with another regulations, like I'd seen in the BBI, when it began, when it was being promoted, there was a clause that civil servants will not be allowed to trade in government businesses. So I don't know whether it's still in the books or it has disappeared, as Shakil would say. So that's like we were saying, like the centers and say, the government officials who are part and parcel of the procurement officers have the information, the prices of the tenders, what is to be tendered, the specifications. So you cannot compete as an ordinary man or woman, you cannot compete with them because they have all the specifications. Number two, and these are my thoughts as well, is about the constitution. The constitution that we promulgated in 2010 is very robust. We are told is one of the best constitutions in the world. It's one of the most progressive constitutions in the world. But again, it talks about that you cannot, nobody should be biased. You cannot subjugate one group of persons. Now, why do you want the civil servants not to do trade? And they are protected by the Constitution. We are discussing so that maybe we come up with the way forward. I can see in the afternoon we have a slot for the way forward. On the one hand, the Constitution says nobody should be biased against another person. On this other side, we are saying civil servants do not trade in business or trade with the government itself. And on the other hand, again, we are saying there's something called a conflict of interest. But they can easily stand back to the Constitution and say, look, we are fortified in what we are doing. So we need maybe a change of shift, paradigm shift, so that we get it inculcated in our ethos. Many of us have been to China through the China exchange programs, the ruling party, Jubilee exchange program to China, APNAC through the Chinese embassy. And we were told that one of the issues they deal with is the morality. It's not even what is legislated. The moral issues is what they deal with. And it really doesn't matter the color and the type of the mouse so long as it catches the light. So we need to have that inculcated in our syllabuses so that when people go to school, when they're being taught, it's not about legislation. We are legislating too much. So that in one area, we have so much pieces of legislation, and that even becomes a headache to judges and magistrates, because one can knock over a case simply because of the rules are conflicting. And the issue again of, I'll make it short. On the issue of gender, there's that good lady who talked about no, there's so much gender. But when we talk of gender, I was seated with the professor, and when in our discussions, we think gender is about just female. But even the cuts are close, male and female. But there's too much violence meted out against women. There's too much bias against women in this country. And as we were discussing the other day, unless we change again what we do, even these ladies getting elected to parliament will be an issue. Ask the ladies members of parliament here what they undergo during the campaign. All manner of insults are thrown at them. True or false, ladies, honorable members? I know, true, beautiful. So we need again to look at that so that we have a level playing ground. And that's why we are saying now, if the BBI goes through, because I'm not certain that we're going to have as many women, honorable members elected to parliament, then we'll have to do the top up. And that is the top up that we'll have to see. You're an economist. How many ladies will have to be elected to the top up? How many of them will have to be added so that we are gender? There are so many formulas. Yeah. Depends on how many are elected. Thank you. So I think those will be my comments for now. But again, on gender issues, I saw there was a matter that was filed by a particular doctor. And these now, I'll throw it again to the ladies in the room and the panelists. There was a particular doctor who was saying, legalize FGM, female genital mutilations. And the truth of the matter is that I didn't see many of, what do you call them? The civil society organizations. None was against, I mean, they either sat back, they never made any submissions, and it was left to the good judge to make the decision. So I don't know where the civil society was in this. Were they for FGM, or were they the silent majority, or were just waiting for the decisions to be made? Luckily, I think the judge said, no, we cannot legalize this. Those are my thoughts for today. Thank you.
And now I think, thank you very much, Honorable Chagabwa. I think now we can have Professor Odor first come just quickly to talk to us, have a comment on a few issues. Honorable Professor Odor, welcome. And then we will have Judy Jomo, we will have Honorable from Dewa, MP for Dewa, and then we will have Honorable from Western, I think, Professor. Yes.
Thank you very much. And I want to start by saying that I have thoroughly enjoyed the manner in which the information has been presented. It is really easy to capture and draw on very critical issues. Just maybe 3 points to make. Much appreciation on the presentation on gender, and really just to reiterate that when we talk about gender, I know my vice chair, Honorable Jandarwa, has said that we tend to think it is more women, as I mentioned, between women and men. But I think in the context of looking at beneficial ownership, and particularly looking at illicit financial flows or corruption in general, I'd like to remind us that gender is really usually about 2 things. You can see gender as difference, in which case you look at me and you look at Honorable Jude, and even though some people might call him Judy, you will still know he is male and I am female. So gender can be seen to just be difference, and people say that's not a problem. Why do you complain about it? But I think for the purposes of today's presentation, and really the kind of challenges we are facing with illicit financial flows, with beneficial ownership, with even the manner that legislation can exist and not be followed, it is more about power. Gender is about power. So you can find that Tanzania, for example, a number of people are wondering, the constitution clearly stipulates the vice president should come to power if we lose the president. God rest the soul of the Honorable John Pombe Magufuli in peace. But you can see that there were a few people who then, because gender is about power, and power is tending to be seen to be with men than with women. I therefore wanted to really emphasize that as we look at the beneficial ownership, and as we indeed address the matter, not only who it is, who is the owner, but who controls it, that we understand that there could be cases, for example, of that hairdresser who might have been forced to be the face. So we need to remember that as we go deep to look at who owns, I really like the point of Honorable Shabir of knowing who is in control, and to get to see that there are cases where, as a result of this power axis, where women tend to be seen, quote unquote, powerless, to be victims. Secondly, I also would like to say that we ensure that as we speak, we look at the cost of corruption, or the cost of illicit financial flows, and that we present this with the disaggregated data, that we can show the costs. I think I like the manner in which the booklet shows us when we're thinking about human trafficking, although we are going to get boys as well as girls, but we indeed need to ensure that we bring to the fore the much more greater differential and usually negative impact that comes on account of somebody being female and the other male and the societal underpinnings thereof. And because I don't want to take up too much time, I just want to close by what is really a very passionate angle for me. I was observer number 36 at the CKRC when we were looking at the constitutional review process. And I know I went to UNDP and insisted that they could not give all the resources to FIDA because they decided that constitutional making was only legal. And I told them absolutely not, because we are talking about societal re-engineering, value setting, and ensuring that the laws and the legislation which are there are then put into practice. And so I conclude by saying that I think in Kenya we do need now to figure out how we can create a conversation. And I think a list of shame, for example, is useful. But I think as we sit here, both here physically and online, we are at a point in our country where you're a hero if you are corrupt. And where, in fact, if you look at perhaps what constitutes your being eligible for election, it might be the degree to which you can engage in illicit undertakings without flinching. So I would like to suggest that we, in terms of our way forward, begin to truly grapple this data, this legislation. How do we begin a conversation that will make many of us feel that we would like to stop this corruption and the illicit financial flows? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Odwar. And now we go to Jude Jomo. Yes, Jude Jomo. Judy, they say. Okay. Honorable Jude Jomo.
Thank you. That confusion got me a job sometimes. Because I applied to be employed at the Kenya Power and Lighting immediately after my high school. And when they saw my name, they thought I was a lady. And they had a day for interview for ladies, and a day for interview for men. So they sent me a letter and invited me to interview during the girls' day. It ended up becoming very humorous, boosted my confidence when I was interviewed as the only man and the others were ladies, and I got myself a job. So thank you very much. I'm Jude Jomo. I'm the servant of the people of Kiambu. I represent them as their member of parliament. I'm sorry for coming late. There was quite a serious jam and I was not able to leave in good time. I'm also the chairman of the Parliamentary Caucus on Economy and Business, a relatively new caucus that I will talk about more. Thank you for this particular workshop. It is very, very important, the matters that we are discussing. And I think beneficial ownership is a new terminology that has come in. It was not there before. In fact, I heard of it, I think this year, when there was a deadline, because I think I was not in parliament when it was discussed. But I think it's one way of really trying to get to the bottom of people who are encouraging corruption to go on. But my greatest fear is that corruption is becoming more and more ingrained, even in the way we do things, right from our homes. Somebody was telling me the other day that when you are sending your kid to the shop, the kid will start negotiating a tip because you have sent the kid to the shop. He will not think that he's doing a duty. He wants to negotiate so that he can be paid. So as this kid grows now, he will escalate that to other levels. Even at our constituency level, people come demanding for money because they elected you. and they keep on reminding you they are only one year remaining. You will come to us. So they want you to keep on dishing them money. I have never seen a career where you are given a salary so that you can share with people. But that is exactly what our career is all about. They want us, for the money that we are given, we share with them so that they can elect us a next term. So even when we are looking for ways of doing legislation to reduce corruption, we must address our moral values. We must address our moral values so that we stop thinking like that, like corruption all the time. Yeah. Even now, when we are going to negotiate dowry, sometimes it looks like corruption also. Because some homes have become very, very expensive. They say, oh, our daughter is educated, so value goes up. You know, so those are some of the things that we really need to think about. I like the way Honorable Shakir defined grand corruption and corruption for survival. In my own thinking, if we can deal with grand corruption, automatically survival corruption will also go down. But it is very, very unfortunate that as we talk now, schemes are being made to do even bigger corruption. And that is why at independence, our GDP was higher than the GDP of Singapore. Today, at West Yonana, you know, Singapore is much, much higher. Why? Maybe because of the way they make decisions. In our country, decisions to do projects sometimes are not based on the value of project, but they are based on who is pushing that project and how much does he want to make from that project. The last corruption we had are those dams, which were never built. Yeah? Even before the first grader went to site, money had been eaten because those projects were being done to eat money. That is what is happening these days. I went to follow up a road in my constituency at Kera the other day. And it's a small road. It's about 7 kilometers. And it needs to be recarpeted. And I knew there was progress going on. So when I went to check, I was told, oh, it has been advertised. So I was shown the advert. I could not comprehend it because they did not use the name of the road. They were using numbers. But what amazed me is that this road has been combined with so many other roads in the county, such that the total value of the work was about 2 billion. 2 billion shillings. This particular road would have cost, say, like 300 million or something like that, but it has combined with others. So how many Kenyans can be able to do a 2 billion job? Very few. So when I investigated, I found out that it is also another way of getting loans from other countries. Because when the job is 2 billion shillings, somebody will have to come from out there. So they have targeted that job to be done by Chinese companies. And they know that the Chinese companies, all they need is to have the proper paperwork done. Give them all the paperwork that they need. Then they will go out there, they look for money, and they finish the job even before you give them a down payment. They'll have finished the job. Then you start negotiating now how you are going to pay them. Because most of the Chinese companies that are here are backed by the Chinese government. Either they are partly owned by the Chinese government or they are partly owned by their state governments. Many of the companies that we see here. So they can be able to be financed and to do the work. Two, when they combine these projects and they make them a big project, then whoever is negotiating will also negotiate a better cut. You know, and that is how grand corruption is being prepared in this country, by making enormous projects. If you look at it the other way around, if these projects would have been spread out and given to many companies, even more Kenyans would benefit, because one Kenya will come and do one project of 200 million, another one of 100 million, and that money will remain within the country. But now when we make it 2 billion, it will be done efficiently by a Chinese company, but all this money will be repatriated to out of the country. So we will never benefit as a country apart from having that good infrastructure. Those are some of the things that we must start dealing with, so that even if we are not legislating, we can keep on putting pressure on those decision makers, on those procurement entities, so that they can follow the line. I want to say maybe a word or two about the Caucus on economy and business. Like I had said before, it is a new caucus. And the main objective of our caucus is to try and help us think through the legislations that we do so that they improve our economy, right from the way we do our budget. Right now, the problem with our budget is that it is not a balanced budget. Even the supplementary budget that we passed yesterday, the government has to go out there and borrow. And that is why there is a serious debt burden in our country. So ours is to try and help so that we can work out, and we tried even I'm also a member of the budget committee. We tried what the government was proposing, we really reduced the deficit so that we can reduce the amount that the government is going to borrow. We also ask ourselves the way we allocate money. The best way, is it the way that is going to provoke growth of our economy? I remember during supplementary, one of the members who contributed said that we have allocated so much money, I think like 10 billion to Kenya Airways, and allocated 2 billion to Agricultural Finance Corporation. Yet, agriculture is the backbone of our economy. Right now, KQ, we can only equate it with tourism, which is as good as dead. Right now, we are the best tourists here because we have occupied this hotel. They'll wait from Zungu here for a long time before the foreigners start touring our country. So we should be allocating more money to our agriculture. I remember when I was young, my dad used to go to AFC and get a loan, then he would come and do passion fruits. Passion fruits were very good because you harvest them and traders were coming to buy them right from the shamba, right there. And that is the work that I was doing when I was in high school. Every Saturday, we must go to the shamba, pick passion fruits because the buyers are going to come and pick them. Today, if I want to do some farming, like now, I would like to, if I have a good shamba, I can, I was admiring mangoes as I was coming here and avocado, I would like to plant them. But who is going to finance me? If you go to AFC, they don't have money. So we should have such institutions funded properly so that we stop this habit of, what do you call it? Handouts. We want our farmers to go to that institution, they get a loan and they pay. They will enjoy the profit and the institution will become bigger and fund even more. During one of the meetings with our caucus, we went to Mombasa and we met people who were Juakali people who are involved in export business. And they really complained because government makes abrupt decisions, imposes some taxations, even without notice. And they were complaining about a time when import tax was adjusted upwards, and it was adjusted when their cargo was on high seas. And by the time it got here, it was not possible to pay for the taxes because they were not given enough. So those are some of the things that we need to address as parliamentary caucus on economy. And we can also work closely with you to fight corruption. Because I believe if we had a corruption-free environment, our country will grow much, much faster. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah.
Because if it wasn't for the caucus, we were going to be stuck with a very, very bad deal. Please take credit for that.
Thank you. Yeah,
those are the small things that caucuses and groups like us can do.
Yeah, I remember, thank you for reminding me that, Mheshimiwa, we bumped into this EPA. It was not properly publicized. It just came up in the papers that we are, opening up in the 2.6% of our economy to UK for peanuts, for 2 or 3 items that we can import, we can export to UK. And actually, we rushed to civil society who had studied the bill properly, and they took us through one morning. And unfortunately, it was the same morning that this EPA was coming for ratification in Parliament. But due to the work that working together well, we were able to stop that bill. We were able to have public participation repeated. The whole process was done all over again. And we also noted some adjustment.
I think it is back, but we have now Honorable Martin Peters to briefly take us to some of the comments. And then from there, we will get to Honorable Adegala, and then finally Honorable Chachu. And I think we'll come to closing between with the Chair and Honorable Fatma Ibrahim, member for Yala. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, we lost the power also.
Yes.
Okay, I'm equally grateful to the TI and my fellow colleagues who have presented. To me, let me just say something about the effect of this thing. In my constituency, the crude death rate has gone high. The suicide ideations and executions have also gone high. Domestic violence, hopelessness have really set in. And this is because of the corruption which is going on in this country. If you talk of misinvoicing, actually you're saying that you're denying taxes, money to agriculture, you're talking about money to education and everything. And it takes two to tango. We went to China and you remember our chair. The objective was to say, why are you not corrupt here and you are exporting corruption? And they said very well that as a government, we have agencies, we have farms, we do trade with you guys, but what do? If a project is costing 200 shillings, you tell them to put it 300 shillings so that you can take 100 on top. So it is us to step up and fight. And I believe it doesn't matter however few we are, we can still fight. Somebody was also crying that he is falling. And when he was crying, he was cutting the own branch he was sitting on and crying that he's falling. And that's what we are doing in Kenya. The other point I want to make, before independence, we were crying for independence so that we can have self-governance. When we got independence, the expectation is we can govern ourselves. The only importation we could do was on technology and some goods which we didn't have. But right now, we import even jobs, even labor that are roasting maize on the street. So we deny our Kenya is on the rise. And that brings poverty level in the household, rock bottom. So what I want to encourage my fellow members of parliament, there is something going on which we have to fight so much. Jagagu and I sit in the health committee. And Jude Jomo, we did recommend, we are the first one to investigate cancer. And we were solidly clear that there was a mess, and we recommended the DCI and the other prosecutory arms to do their work. So the health department committee investigation and report was tabled, and that was it. Now it's in peak. The same things we say. After peak is done, it will be a game of musical chairs, game of elimination to buy time. When all these are finished, they will be shelved, and that is it. So the problem we have here, ladies and gentlemen, is that there's no law enforcement. It doesn't matter how many legislative you come up, but the people who are supposed to implement the other side of the arm, which is the executive. The judiciary also try their own business, but the executive were supposed to exact the implementation of these resolutions is not there. Lastly, I just want to encourage you, TI, and all of us. We are not going to give up, but we are going to fight smart. The corruption starts in BPS, then the budget. That is where they put things. Is that right there? And I want to say, without contradiction, that civil service is a career.
You cannot be a civil servant and do business at the same time. You look at the Western world. If you're a civil servant, you're a civil servant, period. But you cannot do the same, you cannot do business in the same office where you are in. So however ugly, however huge, Ramones it is, ladies and gentlemen, let's keep fighting. Let us not give up. We will deter them and we will succeed at the very end. Keep it low. Thank you very much.
Now it's Honorable Dagan. We can have you, Honorable, here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Transparency International and APNAC Kenya. Actually, much has been said by my other colleagues about corruption. And we have 3 C's here in Kenya: corruption, corona, and cancer. All are the same. They have really affected our country in matters of economy and other things. So far, when you look at things that are happening here, like my colleague here, we are in the same committee with him, this came a scandal and so forth. Much was said and much was talked about it. We even saw a company that we just formed, was it 3 months or so, Shop and Buy, and that company, and in fact, if you Google, you'll find it selling the underpants of women. And here it was, given that kind of tender to supply, to supply drugs, the corona. So as much as we want to cry and we want to talk also on things, tribalism plays also another important role. Because when somebody is been found in corrupt practices, he'll whip or she will whip the whole community to come and support him or her, that our person is right, is being fought 1, 2, 3. If we can look at the tribal kingpins and tribal people, they're the ones who are condoning and bringing in, making a lot of corruption be rampant in this country. So I think maybe if we can try to avoid Transparency International and other bodies come up, look at these tribal kings, maybe things can work. And when you come to member of illicit flows, corruption, tax evasion, there are so many firms that have even now relocated because of tax. They have relocated to Uganda. And we have seen so many, be it these companies zenye zinatengeneza mabati, zenye zinatengeneza mafuta, all of them are relocating to Uganda and other neighboring countries. And this is just because of corruption. Corrupt officers in the Kenya Revenue Authority will impose a lot of taxes on them, and then they will close the door and leave the way they have done. And this makes our children to lack employment just because of a few corrupt people. So maybe for Transparency International and other organizations can come up, they see how things can be done, that will assist so that we don't have many of these investors taking off out of Kenya. Another corruption entity are the county governments. My colleague here talked about roads, Honorable Jude, amount of money being used. Like in the county governments, there is a road called Adagala, Shakil, Odol Road. It's one road, but you'd find 10 contractors have been given the same road. And that road, about these 10 contractors, there's only one contractor who will do Adagala, Shakil, Odol Road. But the others, Adagala, Odol Road, or Odol, Shakil Road, that kind of suckers. That's what's happening in the county government. And there's a lot of corruption taking place there. So something has to be done, surely, to ensure once the road is done, before payments are made, because they've settled at the fees, why can't even the government officers leave Nairobi to go to these counties to check exactly before money is released? Have those roads been made? Those are avenues for stealing Kenyan money. Corruption is rampant. The other day, I said it the other day here. There's an officer who was deployed in this 2017, but the money that is being charged for a contractor has gone to court, work that was done in 2014. So this CEO here is being wheeled on a hospital bed to go and give evidence on something that he doesn't even know. It's a pending bill right from the other government, because the other governor left and the new governor is in. So these kind of things are the ones that are bringing in a lot of corruption. County governments are a lot of corruption, and the national government. We would argue civil society, international transparency, come up. We see how these things can be stopped. Once stopped, money can flow. Even the same example, he's talking of Chinese companies. Even in our counties, locals are never given. You'll find people from another side. There is in fact, in my county, there is a notion, there is a certain kind of people who have money. They're the ones who are being given contracts in such counties like Vihiga, and the locals are never given. So Nakuta, people of Vihiga are suffering. Any small business in Vihiga is closing because money has been taken by these outside contractors, and the people of the county remain without anything. So this corruption thing has to be fought. Let us not keep on sitting in hotels. We're talking about it. I think it's high time. Right now, the issue of corruption has to be tackled. And those illicit flows where they have taken money outside, and whatever it's called, what were you here? Cash. When somebody has been found with an offshore account, I think the best thing, the government should seize that money back to the country and the person charged. Na afungwe. Sio tu tunaongea tu, we are just talking, we hear people, hii kitu ya NYS, imeimbwa, and the people are just dancing here. We see them walking, catwalking, and doing all sorts of things. It's high time civil society, including an organization like Transparency International, come in. We see how we can eradicate this. Once corruption is eradicated, our young generation, the youth, are jobless. If this money is used properly in this country of Kenya, the money that is in offshore accounts, the money that people have put up big hotels in outside this country, if it's just circulates within this country, this one will ensure our youth are employed, our sons and daughters, when they leave university, they will have something to do, even if it's not jobs, but the economy is doing well. They can be able to manage themselves in a good way. The young girls and boys can also be even employers. They can employ others. So this corruption, the animal corruption, has brought a lot of problems. We are suffering because of corruption. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dagala. Now we have Honorable Chachu to talk us briefly about environment and what they are doing about that in the Parliament, briefly. And then we will have Honorable Shakir and Honorable Ibrahim to close. Yeah.
Thank you. I really want to apologize for coming late. I had my bag in my car the whole of yesterday. I don't come yesterday evening, but when most of my colleagues said they are coming in the morning, I went home and I left at 7:30, but somehow before Mkutano, I will jump almost 3 hours. I'm really sorry. I want to start with a story. I read a story in a book when I was in graduate school many years back in the US. The book is by a gentleman called Keith Richburg. The title is Out of America, A Black Man Confronts Africa. And this guy was a Washington Post bureau chief. It was a major magazine, papers in the States. The bureau chief for Africa based in Nairobi, traveled quite a bit. So there's a story in the book about corruption. And two graduate students met in the US. They are both pursuing their master's program. Eventually, both of them went home. One is an African, one is an Asian. Could be from Singapore, Malaysia, one of those Asian tigers. And they kept their friendship. One became very senior officers, actually ministers in their governments. And the African minister went with his friend, his colleague in Singapore. They became just about 8 years, after they left school and they went back home. So the guy had a very nice house, 2 nice cars, very nice house, a few servants. They was doing quite well. Just the other day, we were poor residents in the US. Where did you make all this money? The guy told him, as we are driving here, so a nice highway, 20% from that highway. After a few years, this guy, this Asian, came to visit his friend in Africa. They drove, and when they came to this bungalow, it's a palace, with more than 5 vehicles, servants and workers all over. So after, they treated wine, you're even poorer than me when you were in the States. Where did you make all this money? The guy told me, come to the window. Open the window of his house, this nice new house. And he said, Dad, this is that highway. The guy kept on looking. You can't see that nicely paved highway? It's just shrubs, trees, and everything. Then he looked at him and said, 100%. So talking about substance corruption or grand corruption. The book is called Out of America, A Black Man from South Africa, by Keith Richburg. So I chair a caucus also in Parliament, called One Caucus. And Jude Jomo is one of my good members. I wanted to talk about wildlife-related crimes and vital crimes. And I want to just share an experience what we did do in last Parliament, in the 11th Parliament, when we both served in the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. And in 2013, if you recall, there was serious poaching in this country. We almost lost all our wildlife species. Serious poaching. And so during that time, we actually came up with a law, which is called Wildlife Management and Conservation Act, Wildlife Coordination and Management Act of 2015. And in that law, we actually came with very harsh penalties to deter, in particular, poaching and other wildlife-related crimes. For instance, in Kenya today, if you poison wildlife, you would be fined 5 million shillings or 5 years imprisonment. If you are burning charcoal in parks, national parks, national reserve, or any of our protected areas, will go for jail for 2 years or will pay 200,000 shillings. Another crime is bushmeat hunting. What we call subsistence hunting. If you are caught, 3 years, no option of fine, because most likely this force may not be able to raise any money. If you are caught purchasing wildlife, meat or eggs, it's a crime, wildlife crime, you get a fine of up to 1 million shillings. If you are caught possessing wildlife species of any kind, you will go in for 3 years or you'll pay 3 million shillings. The critical one is this one. If you are caught aiding or supporting you assist somebody to import, export critically endangered wildlife species, you will be fined 100 million shillings or life imprisonment. Actually, we wanted them to be hanged, but we couldn't because our constitution does not allow for that. So we went for the lesser one. As it happened, yes, in 2014, a Chinese called Tang Yangjing was arrested here at JKI. He just carrying some ivories. He was fined 20 million shillings or 7 years in jail. And I don't know whether he paid the fine or so, but it happened in 2014. And I think there are even others. So in wildlife crime today is actually, or environmental crime, it's actually what is supporting Al-Shabaab. As we are speaking, they are selling charcoal to Kenya here and to many African countries. They are killing all our little wildlife species, rhinos, elephants, so many others, including the Chinese or these Asian countries. And through that, deep sea fishing, in the oceans in Somalia, along the coast, and selling all these fishes. It's actually how Al-Shabaab is financing its crimes today using environmental goods. So that's all I'll say for now. And I hope you'll share with us your report so that those of us who are late are able to reach and catch up with our opponents.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chacho, for that conversation and highlighting the key issues in relation to how much we lose in the wildlife poaching and the issues about environmental damage and justice. We now have a comfortable closing time of this session, and we invite Honorable Shakir and Honorable Fatma Ibrahim. But Fatma will just start briefly to comment on what she is doing at the East African Legislative Assembly, very key motion she's working on, which is relevant here, and we've been working with her. We want to hear that briefly, and then Honorable Shakil will join her, and the meeting, we can close this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. And others, I hope I'm loud. Okay, they can hear me.
Yes.
Thank you. I want to also thank all members who are here. And I want to tell Philip that securing the commitment of members is very important. And I want to appreciate your presence. And I was invited by TI to discuss about the motion. I know all members, they know me, Fatima Ibrahim. I was in the 11th Parliament with a number of MPs, and I know Dr. Odwor. We met with Honorable Adagala, and I know all of you. I remember when I was in the 11th Parliament, Honorable Shakir was still pushing this network. And I'm happy that now you have a fleet of staff to work with you. And they have been supported by the Parliament, I'm assuming that. I want to just briefly thank TI in inviting us. I think discussing issues of illicit financial flows and corruption is an agenda for all of us, because we all know that all this denies crucial resources from our service delivery of healthcare, delivery of food, delivery of education. And now that COVID has tied many corners of people getting employment and because of unemployment. So I think the motion I wanted to discuss is a motion that is being supported by Transparency International. The motion has been given a notice to be tabled, and the technical support is by TI, Philip and his team is supporting us, because parliamentarians also sometimes require technical support, because our understanding might be limited, and we require technical support. And I request TI and your team to support the parliamentary network which is dealing with the corruption, because they need that support, both technical and organizing their programs and all that. The motion is to discuss the whole issue of illicit financial flows in terms of how it affects our extractive industries, how it affects domestic resource mobilization, how it affects delivery of service. And because of this COVID, we could not secure the earlier motion, because it was in the order paper of, as you know, parliamentarians, motions must be in the order paper for it to qualify to be discussed in the parliament. So now we're expecting it to move on, but we want to make a regional discussion and a dialogue so that partner states of East Africa community can understand the whole implication of illicit financial flows and the connection between corruption and those flows. And our intention is to create publicity, understanding, awareness among the legislators, among the council members who are in the parliament with us, representing the other 6 partner states, including Kenya, and also securing some policy and legislative formulation around that, but also to trigger the level of the volume of monies, of finances associated. One document I was reading of the AU about the high-level panel chaired by the former president of Thabo Mbeki estimated $88.6 billion is lost through these illicit financial flows. That's huge amount. If you divide by 55 AU members, each country will lose roughly, although some are higher, some are lower. But if you just take an arbitrary, division, it will be $1.6 billion per annum. Can you imagine that money? It's half of our budget could be what we are losing. And Kenya is also losing almost 8.3% of revenues through tax evasion, misinvoicing, mispricing by international corporations. Sometimes we are talking of the national level, but the dirty money is involved at the regional, at the national level in terms of illicit financial flows. I think we need to tighten some of these things. And I want to request TI, and the resources are limited, but parliamentarians have a good voice to invest in. And if you support like this network of parliamentarians who are against the corruption and linking it to illicit financial flows, then it will provide every week, if they can have a motion, every evening they can have a caucus and a discussion around this to be supported, because Parliament doesn't fund networks. It only funds committees and standing committees and other committees. So I want to seek the support of TI to support members, because members are also frustrated sometimes what is happening in Parliament. That motion I have shared with you will come up soon. We thought that we would have disposed of last year, towards April, May, June in our sessions, but because of this whole effect of, or the impact of COVID, it has really, confused our agenda and how we discuss issues. We don't meet physically nowadays as a National Assembly, but inshallah, this session we might have the motion. And my aim is to secure a broader discussion and bring the issues of how illicit financial flows is denying crucial resources to service delivery. And the many literature about this illicit financial flows clearly indicates that if Africa, and East Africa in particular, and Kenya as our country, if you seal those loopholes and compact corruption and illicit flows, you don't need international aid. You don't need total international aid. International aid comes with other demands, other conditions, other payment of debts, and all that. So also, I think members of this network, Kenya is a member of these financial network institutions that are global, that are regional, and they are supposed to monitor these illicit financial flows and all that. One country like South Sudan, Republic of South Sudan, is experiencing a lot of illicit financial flows through even our partners, particularly the country has been mentioned, East Africa Community members, that most of the money from the oil and the precious wood or environmental products, issues of ores, metal ores and all that, and development money come through our countries. And we all know that most of these highly connected government officials in Republic of South Sudan have fleets of property in Kenya. And we have allowed such looted money to influence our markets. And that's why you can't, the price of property doesn't come down in Kenya because there is stolen money that is being invested in Kenya. I'm looking forward, PI, to working with the National Assembly, this parliamentarian network against corruption, and linking it to illicit financial flows. And I think, Honorable Shabir, you need to link your network to East Africa Community Legislative Assembly so that we widen the scope of your network and our engagement, and we'll have more voice at the regional level. You can plan if, we have live sessions, one-to-one sessions in our plenary in Arusha. Could be your team can come to Arusha. Could be look for support from the National Assembly, a gentleman agreement support, because I know for sure unless things have changed, caucuses are not substantively financed by National Assembly. Thank you. I want to end there, and I'm looking forward to future engagement. Thank you. And I will share this engagement with our members in IALA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ibrahim, for that wonderful discourse on what you are doing at the East African Legislative Assembly and how relevant it is to the fight against corruption in all fronts. And having the regional perspective, I think, gives it even a better way of making it successful eventually. I now want to call on one of our colleagues at Global Financial Integrity in Washington, if she can hear me. Can you hear me, Kaisa? Yes. For your closing?
Yes, I can.
Please, if you can briefly close this session for us and say a word or two so that we can have our final closing and go for lunch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you, everyone. This has been a wonderful discussion. I just want to thank all the speakers on behalf of Global Financial Integrity that contributed to the discussion today. I also want to thank all the participants for their remarks and questions posed. I think it's incredibly valuable to hear and share all these different perspectives from everyone that attended today. I just want to stress that I think this discussion today really highlighted the importance of the issue of illicit financial flows and how illicit financial flows affect a wide range of issues. It has to do with trade misinvoicing, with corruption, but also with issues like gender equality, environmental crimes, and other forms of organized crimes. And these are not separate issues. They're all connected by the illicit finance component. So that also marks the importance of financial transparency measures, and in particular, beneficial ownership transparency, which is an incredibly effective measure to combat corruption, trade misinvoicing, and also other various forms of organized crime. So the beneficial ownership legislation in Kenya is a very, very important step in the right direction. But I think the discussion today has given us a lot of valuable material to work with further in the future. So in that regard, the partnership between Global Financial Integrity and TI Kenya is very valuable. We hope that the fact sheets that we co-produced will be useful for a wide range of different organizations and agencies working on all the issues addressed today. And we definitely look forward to continuing our collaboration with TI Kenya to work on these issues, and also to continue to work together with all organizations and participants part of the discussion today. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and we look forward to our continued work.
Thank you very much, Kaisa, for that talk, and thank you. We have closed the online session now. I think we just have the two MPs, the chair of APNAC and Honorable Ibrahim, to close this session finally. Thank you. Honorable. Yes, the deputy chair would like to say a word also before the chair. Please do come.
For 5 minutes. Yeah, sorry, I needed to come back because you requested me to mention this. That's about the whistleblowers protection bill. We all know I talked to Dirango, the gentleman in charge of the budget committee, and I hope he'll slot us when we come back in the next session. That bill is very critical. We must appreciate that you saw there's a lady who was killed, strangled. She is a deputy director, I think, with the National Lands Commission. She was meant to testify in a certain matter yesterday. The matter was coming up for hearing yesterday. But a week ago, she vanished. And what they did is that they found her body. It's so sad because now the reports that we are seeing in the papers today is that the post-mortem shows that she was actually strangled. But before that, she was left. So you can understand the kind of the cruel death, I mean, she underwent. That again brings us to the Witness Protection Bill. I mean, there's an act, the Witness Protection Act, which in my view, again, as a practitioner, doesn't really protect the witnesses. Because you are protected to the level where you are testifying. The moment you finalize testifying, then they're done away with you. You know, unlike at The Hague, where they'll protect you and your family, they will relocate you, and you begin a new life. But now in Kenya, they'll protect you when you are valuable to them when you're testifying for the state. But the moment you step out of the witness box, the moment the matter is concluded, either way, either the matter is they get an acquittal or they get a conviction, then you're on your own. And they'll just protect you as an individual. They don't protect your family. So if we need to go the entire hog so that see where we can have this act amended so that if somebody is placed on a witness protection, even their family is placed, the immediate family members are placed on that protection so that we safeguard the lives of Kenyans. Thank you. I hope I did it. I gave it justice, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair of APNAC, Mr. Gagwa. Now the Chairman of APNAC can come and Honorable Ibrahim to close the meeting. Thank you. Please officially say it is closed, and we can move and launch the fact sheets. You can launch the fact sheets. We can have the fact sheets here. I think we will give you to officially launch the fact sheets and yes, close the session. Thank you.
Ready? Okay. On behalf of can we start? On behalf of the participants, APNAC, our friends from the Yala and the team, especially the ones on Zoom, it's been an honor to spend some time together to discuss the issue of illicit funding and corruption, and we look forward to the next step. And we continue, let's go, the fight against corruption goes on, a luta continua, And I think the little we can do, we shall continue to do. Mishmio?
Thank you, Chairman. I think we're launching this booklet, which when I skimmed through, it's very easy to understand, and it's can be used by even people who have very limited understanding about illicit financial flows and corruption. And I support the chairman, is true. The war or the fight against all this is still on, and this tool will be part of the fight. I want to say thank you to TI for investing in such information and publication. Thank you. We will apply it and use it where possible.
Okay. We finished?